it more important to have just inclusive data and diverse data sets, no matter where the research is ongoing, or partnerships between developed and emerging markets? So yeah, so it'd be great to get those numbers. I think I see okay. I'm looking at the real-time results. Let me know when we're done.
So as of right now, about 59% of participants have participated in the poll. So we can wait for a little more.
Yes, we'll wait.
This meeting is being recorded.
Interesting. For 74%.
Yeah, so now we're at about 75% of participants have participated in the poll. If you'd like, we can kind of close it down now.
I think we can close it. I think, but what's interesting here is that essentially the overwhelming ones are global AI, implement the rules, the governance, I think, and education, which to me, it actually surprises me. So I think we should do that at the end of the presentation. I want to just get an idea. So if someone can just track that would be great. So, okay. Were you able to get the results?
Yep, so we have the results and they're saying.
Perfect. So let's continue. So, so most of the AI research and development is concentrated in a few key regions of the world. I don't think you're going to be surprised at this. So first of all, you have the United States. The US is the global leader by far. And it's largely driven by the things that you would expect. Companies like Google, Microsoft, ChatGPT, NVIDIA, IBM, as well as the top universities, Stanford, MIT, UC Berkeley, and of course, Silicon Valley in particular. It all serves as a hub. And I think one of the things you'll see as we look at the different markets is that the importance, that critical importance of hubs, the expertise, the financing, the universities, they all go together. Then you have China, and China aims to be the leader in AI by 2030. They also have their major centers of excellence, Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen, significant centers. And of course, they too are aided by their tech giants, the likes of Alibaba, Baidu, and Tencent. Okay. Then you have Europe. The UK is the most advanced in that sense, and again, led by a couple of universities. You have Cambridge and Oxford. And one notable fact is that Europe is also taking the lead, I'd say, in terms of AI regulation. And when it comes to regulation, the question is, how much regulation is it going to be stopping their advancement? If too much regulation, so far the US has sort of looked at what Europe is doing, but I'd say that Europe globally is the one that's leading when it comes to regulation. And then Canada, of course, you have again the Toronto and McGill universities are both leading that. So you can see much of, so far you've seen the concentrations are very highly concentrated in areas of the world that are much more advanced. Of course, China you can put in either category. And then we have Israel. Israel tends to be very innovative in the tech sector, advanced in areas of cybersecurity, healthcare, and for some reason, autonomous driving. So these are the regions that really dominate AI research due to their technological infrastructure, the funding availability, and also the concentration of professionals. So those three really go together, and it's really difficult to get something going if you don't have all of those elements in place, because they really feed on each other and help and build on each other. So, but for AI to really realize its full potential, it needs to diversify the research, both geographically and demographically. And essentially it has to be it has to be AI for all, and in order to do that, we have to move quickly, because it's the faster the pace, the further behind, or the greater the disparity between the two worlds, the AI world and the AI that isn't, and it's really booming. In terms of the size of the market, in 2022 it was 87 billion. 2023 it had already gone up to 150 billion, so 72% growth, and then it's projected to grow to 1.3 trillion by 2030. Now, these numbers differ depending on which source you go to. Some it's much higher, but the important thing to note here is that it's growing fast, and as I said, because of the exponential growth, it's unless we close the gap, it will just get bigger because the impact is so high. So the question is, in a way, it's a tale of two worlds, AI worlds, and essentially the countries that have it are, I'd say there's a relatively small percentage of the world. Only 20% of the AI of the countries that are in the emerging markets are really driving AI, and that would be probably China and India. So that means the vast majority of the countries in emerging markets are not being impacted very much, or not having much of an impact on AI. And so obviously that has huge implications if 80% of the world is not included in this, right? In terms of what kind of research is being done, whether it's healthcare, which can be, and I think if you had a chance to read the article, which was the article that I wrote, which was basically Fei Li's book, the worlds I see, you really do have to have you have to have data sets that represent the entire community, right? So if you're only having one segment of the population to say for a diabetes solution, it could be very application. So it's really important. I happen to come from Africa, so I'll use that example. This is just a picture of the Berlin Conference in 1984 to 86, where essentially Europe carved up Africa as part of the colonial scramble for Africa, where as you can see, Africa is a continent that has now about 54 countries and 1.4 billion people. So similar to India and China, but it's 54 countries, and those countries were split up essentially based on what Europe wanted to have as their areas of influence. And so post independence, you have countries that have very people who have no ethnic relations to each other, so it's very arbitrary. And so it has lingering impacts. And when we come to something like AI and technology, it's really important, since it's going to impact all of us. We want to make sure that all of us have a voice in how it's determined, how it's regulated going forward. So what does having having this inclusive approach, it avoids a lot of the biases that happen. I mean, as I said, I'm in Silicon Valley, and so almost every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I'm going to a conference or I was even at Harvard Business School a couple of weeks ago on AI, and the term emerging market didn't even come up because we're talking mostly about AI as it relates to the more advanced economies. And that's because these are the companies that are basically doing the most research. They're the ones that are most funded, and they have, and so they have a certain data set, and that data set essentially determines what kind of research it's done, what kind of queries, what kind of algorithms are put in. So, of course, there's going to be a lot of bias towards the data that's on hand. And at one of the conferences, it was the head of technology at ChatGPT. She was saying one of their biggest limitations is data. So data is really critical, but it's also critical the quality of the data and how much it represents everybody that's going to be impacted. And so that's why, again, I say 85% of the world's population is projected to live in Africa, Asia, or Latin America by 2030. And yet, as we've seen, only about 20% of the AI that's being the impact that's being felt in these markets, and those, as I said, are primarily India and China. So unless the other markets get, whether it's funding or have their data included, regulation or whatever, it's going to be very difficult to have an inclusive AI world, and it's the disparity is going to grow. So that's something that really needs to be addressed, and it's people like you who are out there in these markets that are going to be whether it's because you have different uses of AI as well, right? Because as we said, in Israel, healthcare is a big area of AI, but to what extent does the research they're doing impact the kinds of diseases or issues that we see in India, Latin America, or Africa? So it's really important. It has to be localized for it to really have the desired impact. And right now, it isn't. And as I said, as I go to these conferences, it's almost like two different worlds. That you have the world that has that very AI focused autonomous driving, and then there's the other world that's often not represented at these events. So the question is, how do you do that? And as I said, and I'm not joking, I'm saying that, you're all in the regions that you're in, and it's up to you to really make your voices heard on whether it's, if you can't come to a conference, many of these conversations, as I said, are happening in big events, but there's also a lot of discussion going on locally. Governments are trying to figure out how to regulate AI, and again, it's very regional, it's very country specific sometimes, but it's all of the things that we talked about in the poll are important. There's the policy, responsible AI, and the right incentives. What's the balance between, how much regulation you want? Will that stifle innovation, creativity, or will it enable it? And then policy, especially for emerging markets as well, because you're giving your data, you're giving a lot of information that you don't have any control over, and sometimes you may not even get the benefit. It's those who are actually doing the coding and the development that get that. So policy is really important, but are our countries equipped to regulate as they should? So it's just a really big issue of concern. And then investment. I think when we did the poll, I think I saw very little. I think it was about 16%. Investment is really, really critical. I would argue that it's really the most important, because if you have investment, you probably have everything else, or you can buy everything else, right? Or you have access. The investment, even in the book that I made, The Worlds I See, she was in academia for a long time, but for a while she went to Google and worked there for a while, and she was just astonished at the difference between how much money you have in the private sector, right? That's available versus the university. So you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see quite a bit of that happening in terms of like it's the companies that have a lot of the resources to make the investments, and to a certain extent, it's up to governments really to regulate them. So that's really critical. And then education. Education is going to be really critical, whether it's education to be able to do AI development or just education and awareness of the subject matter. Like what's the impact of AI? I mean, I as I mentioned, I went to this to an event at Harvard Business School that was actually Karen, one of the ones who started Aspire, along with and basically we saw that the emerging markets aren't typically part of that discussion, and also the just the fact that how the disparity, the disparity of between what we're seeing in, I guess, in Boston versus what I see if I go to Nigeria, say. But it's really, really critical that if we don't catch up with these, with what's going on, we risk being victims. And I'm not saying that I'm not trying to sound like a doomsday person, because I'm not. I think there are huge opportunities within AI, but I do think that it should be very much localized for it to really have impact, the kind of impact that we want to see, and that will enable the entire world to benefit from AI. So these are the risks that come with it. It can be, so going back to that conference, I was really surprised, even at a conference in Boston that has, where you think everyone who goes to a conference is really deep into AI, right? And there were quite, I'd say the level of people, the number of people that engaged almost every day in AI was quite low. For me, that was quite surprising. So it'd be interesting to know to what extent all of you are engaged in AI, because even within the more advanced countries, there's a divide between those who are in AI like on a daily basis. Because if you're not, you should be, because things is changing the world really rapidly in terms of just the path to economic growth. Many industries, like the consulting industry now, that are, they have to reinvent themselves, because the things that they used to really specialize in, the AI can do within minutes, and sometimes even better. So it is going to disrupt industries. Mostly, I think, the more white collar jobs than industry, even though it's probably going to do that too. It will increase the digital divide if it's not developed in emerging markets, or even within more developed markets. Demographically, it has to be, and then the traditional job market. As I said, consultants are no longer. Things that you would ask consultants, or even I write a lot, and so I rely on editors. But even with on that front, I do a lot of it now just by, I can ask the ChatGPT if it likes what if it can critique what I've written, right? And I can get that. And I still think you do need the human interface or impact, because that's just something that's so nuanced. But it does, it does cut time. It does, and so everyone is going to be disrupted to some extent. And then, of course, there's the concerns over privacy and security, because, as I mentioned, sometimes you don't even know it, but your data is being collected everywhere. Just everywhere, and people know, and the data that it takes, it also basically programs, everything is built on the data that it gathers. So number one, if it's biased, it will accelerate the bias. And lots of things can happen that are of the unintended consequences, I would say, and whether it's willful or people, if they think it's helpful, it's hard to say, but these are the risks that come along with it, and that governments or whoever have to be concerned about. talked about, I don't think it's one solution for equitable AI. I think it has to be everyone has to be involved, civil society. There has to be diverse voices, as I said, having a voice at these conferences that happen around the world, especially in developed markets where, where many of the decisions are now being made. There's a, I think that there's a case to be made for emerging markets also to collectively speak amongst each other about how it's affecting them, how it's impacting them, and what they can do. Academia, industry, but much of academia, the work that's being done in academia is also funded by industry, right? So I don't know how much I don't know independence there is there, or if there's bias within that as well. International organizations, and then of course government. So I'd say it's quite complex what has to be done, but it definitely requires it's a global call to action. And as I said, the industry is moving so fast that it's hard to say to what extent these discussions can be effective, given how the different approaches each country and region takes to it. And again, like in the US, it's really let the AI, the companies do what they want to a large extent. Europe is much more, putting brakes on it. And so, so we'll have to see. But I think here, what I'd like to say is that what's going to be critical is that we do get that bridge between the haves and the have-nots, or the AI heavy concentration and those that are not, because of the technological gap, which will grow exponentially, which will also impact the economic growth of these regions. We have to think about creating new job skills to deal with AI. And for AI to have the long-term viability, I don't think it can work if you don't include 80% of the population. It just won't work. And so that goes back to the local, it being so local. It really needs local problem solving, because what's most important in India or Brazil in terms of AI and its applicability is probably not the same as what's important here in California or New York or wherever. So it really requires people like you who are out there looking at AI as it applies to your market. And who knows? I mean, some of the things that are done in India would probably have a lot of resonance or relevance in Latin America or Africa more than it would in again the US, or some of it might even have impact on US. So I just think that it's really important that we have that ability to develop locally, and also to use local data, because that's really illustrative, and it determines how AI evolves. So I think that's all I was going to say before we open it up to discussion. I did want to go back to the poll that we did, and just talk about my bias is that, yes, while I think global governance, education, data sets, and so forth is important, I think the biggest factor is the funding for AI. I think that's really critical. And then building that ecosystem, those local ecosystems, because I mean, the reason Silicon Valley thrives is because it has, the universities, it has the venture capital, it has the technology, the technology companies, and so that really helps accelerate growth. So for emerging markets, the funding is important, but also you need to link it to the other factors that are going to be relevant, that can help accelerate innovation in this space. So I think that's it. If we can now turn it to questions, I can just stop sharing.
That sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Monique. That was really awesome to hear more about your understanding and thoughts and perspectives on AI and globalization. So we do have some hands raised. Maria, I believe you've had your hand raised for a long time. If you want to unmute.
Hi. Sorry for don't um, um, turn on my camera. I have some difficult problems, but I want to ask something. I'm actually studying international business, and I know that the AI is really deeply interconnected with the social items. I know that the AI are not only upload the data about to the innovation. It's also it's actually um, uh, tries to interact with the society and to make more comfortness and to make another type of innovation. And I really want to ask, why is the perspective of the AI to the social items, or how can we get the news about the AI, and how can we just know using the basic ChatGPT and or the AIs, more like, how can we understand the AI to the social items, and how can we get a benefit of that?
Okay, thank you for the question. So I think you're asking how AI can benefit social aspects of I guess of like when you say social, do you mean health, welfare? Is that what you're talking about? Yes. Well, I was assuming that's what you meant. No, so I think I that's why I talk about the localization of solutions, because if I mean, the data's out there, right? The data's out there. You can get anything. If I'm in sociology and I want to use AI, I can just go to ChatGPT and the question is, what are you going to get back, right? When you ask your questions. And my argument is that you're probably, given how skewed the research is right now, the social issues that you'll get responses to are likely to be heavily influenced by social issues in the US or, in China. But probably, since you're using ChatGPT, it's probably going to be things that are in more developed countries. So it might not be as relevant to the social issues that you're facing. So that's why I say that the data diversity is really important, that it comes from a wide range, so that whatever issues you're facing are represented, so that when the solution comes back to you, it really speaks to the issues that are common to your, or relevant to your region. And the more data you put in, and the more coders that work with that data, as opposed to someone who is not in your region or doesn't know, the better the quality of the answers. I think that's what I'd say. And it just goes back to the whole point of how important it is to have diverse data sets, diverse regions. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've seen a comment or two in the chat that also, I think, captured a second part of Maria's question, which was, just some of the resources. And perfect. Thank you, Maria. Debashish Behera, would you like to ask your question? I'm so sorry if I've mispronounced your name.
No, you have pronounced it correctly. Hello, ma'am. I hope you are doing good. And I am from India. I am from Delhi, India. And good evening, good morning. Sorry, it's evening here in India. So, ma'am, actually, since last couple of months, we are trying to build Jarvis like personal assistant. It's called Marvin, and we are very focused on making it so that it would be something. It would be far away from biasing, like you have mentioned. We are trying to collect data from different countries, like Africa, America, Latin America, and different countries Nigeria, and we are trying to build that personal assistant as if it should learn, it should handle many languages, it should speak in many languages, and it can respond, it can do, or it will be having its own agents. Like if I ask, if something like futuristic, it's like if I ask him, if I how can I both my, can you please book a flight for me from India to San Francisco? It can, though it will be having its own token, which it will be using rather than using my bank account to book that flight for me. So, ma'am, actually regarding that, I want to ask you what should we focus on now, and is there any possibility of connecting with you personally regarding this project?
Yeah, well, I mean, my LinkedIn is available, but in
Yeah.
that, but I have to say that's a very interesting project because I think those who are doing this kind of more inclusive or more or broader types of information gathering or data gathering are probably going to be very valuable to the big players like the chat GPTs. As I said, they said that their biggest issue is data. And I think it's not just the quantity of the data, but it's also the quality and, the different, and so it enriches their algorithms and their solution if they have much more diverse data sets. So I think so, and part of it is who's connected, right, and where they're connected. So to the extent that more people are connected in these different regions and that they can feed into these more powerful networks, I think you're going to be adding a lot of value to the work they're doing. So you should definitely keep that up.
Ma'am, any other resources you would want to tell me that we should follow on internet?
Any what other resources on AI you mean?
Yeah, like model training, collecting data set, building data set.
Well, I'm not into the building of the data. I mean, I believe that most of these have developer resources that you can play with on their platforms. So they're looking for those. So any of the big ones, whether it's Google, ChatGPT, that's what everyone's doing now, right? Is taking their engine and trying to make models of their own that will ultimately feed into that.
Oh, okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Actually, we are also trying to build our own model rather than using API of any other big companies like GPT or Google Gemini API.
Well, if you're trying to build your own, then I think you should be looking at emerging markets because they're also looking at different platforms that they can work with that might not be where depending on the size of you might be more open to working with them directly, or it might just be easier, right? And you might add more value to it by working with companies in emerging markets and like Latin America and Africa. That's what I would say.
Okay, ma'am. So regarding this, can I connect more with you? I have already connected with you on LinkedIn previous to this master class, and regarding this project, we are looking for any funds, and we are actually looking for these data sets. So I would like to discuss more on this with you on LinkedIn.
Okay, so I'll look out for that.
Thank you, Devashish. And thank you, Monique, for your answer. Next, I'm wondering if Layla Hassan from Bangladesh would like to ask your question.
Okay.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Actually, I would like to show my face, but I am having some bandwidth issue here, network issues here, so I'm unable to show my face. But I'm going to ask questions and then showing my face. I hope you don't mind about that. So there is a debate going on that AI is going to replace humans in future business. So I'm also a business student, so I want to know your insights on this topic. Is AI really replacing humans in the future of business?
I didn't get the question.
Layla, would you mind repeating your question maybe a little bit slower or potentially putting it in the chat?
Yeah, maybe.
And we'll wait for it to come through on the chat, Layla. In the meantime, why don't we hear from Gustavo? Do you want to go ahead and unmute?
I would like to ask, if you have identified any niche on the market, like for South America. Like I'm from Bolivia and currently doing my master in computer science in China. And so far, I have seen there are many large language models based especially for English, Chinese, but for Spanish, there are many countries that speak Spanish, but even that we have many population that can speak Spanish, we don't have same models like us, models like BERT for English or Chinese. We're still facing those. So I don't know if you have any recommendation, and also if you find any niche on this market.
Yeah, I mean, that to your point, right? It's about this bias of where the research and data is being done. It's going to be dominated by that. But my sense is that with all the advances that are happening in AI within language, just in terms of language learning and translation, I think that will probably go away in terms of the language. Because at one of these conferences, I can't even remember which one it was now, they were talking about now, because of AI, being able to, languages that were going to become extinct are now all of a sudden going to be revived, because you can train the AI very quickly on how to simulate those languages and to make it so that you can so they'll live. So actually, I don't think the language disparity is going to be as strong as it is now, as these AI models become better and better trained at understanding different language. And if anything, I think that's one of the really bright areas where languages now are going to be preserved that were not going to be. I think your question is more again just the data. I don't think it's the language anymore. So I think what are the specific issues to your region, whatever language you express them in. That's what I think is going to be important, whatever niche it would be. I mean, did you say you're in Bolivia? Which country? You said you're somewhere in Latin America, right? Yeah. So whatever issues are most pertinent there, I don't think it's a language barrier. I think it's much more of what's relevant to you. And very soon, my guess is that the language, whether you put it in Hindi or you put it in some language that's spoken by just 300,000 people, it's going to be able to process that information.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Gustavo. Next, I'm wondering maybe Portia, if you want to go ahead and ask your question. Portia,
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. This is Portia from Ghana.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm a social inclusion advocate promoting the inclusion of persons with disability in all aspects of development.
Okay.
Speaking about the AI, so far most of the trainings I have seen being offered in the aspects of AI is not so inclusive. It's just limited to one aspect. And I think it doesn't promote the inclusion we are talking about. So how do we go about that? Looking at the kind of projects I work on, how do I integrate that into the work I do?
So what kind of work is it?
So we provide educational support and training to children with special needs. like children with autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, among others.
Well, so what limitation are you? So I think that again, it's a question of the issue. Health is a big issue, right? And the AI tends to go to, just like everything else when it came to whether it was cancer or whatever. The funds tend to go to the areas where I think there's the most need and the most there's just an ability to pay, unfortunately. So I would say that there's some diseases or areas of health that should be getting more of the research and the development. But again, if it's a few companies and a few institutions that are doing the research, they prioritize where the funds are going. So I don't think that's unique to Ghana, though, or Africa. I think that's a global issue of when the funding goes to the biggest diseases or the places where the diseases you have the ability to pay for the medication and because of all the research. I think the one thing I can say is that because of AI, I think the research costs, the R&D costs of developing solutions is probably going to go down a lot, and it's going to be a lot quicker. So hopefully they'll start to cover diseases that didn't have the resources dedicated in the future. But I don't think that's a Ghana specific problem. I think it's a global issue.
Okay, thank you. My question is very well answered.
Very great.
Thank you, Jenny, for the opportunity.
Thank you for your question, Portia. Let's see. We have so many hands raised, which is wonderful. I wish we could call on everyone. But Vidhan, would you like to unmute? We would love to hear your question.
Thank you, ma'am. I want to ask upon like I'm in my final year of BTech, pursuing in electronics and telecommunication.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps we have honors in data science. So as our placement is arriving, there is so much chaos in our IT sector that in job related that AI will take our jobs and it will be threats to us regarding many opportunities in the future. Not in my field also, in many fields like lawyers and other fields that AI will take their job. So how you see it as a threat, or there are opportunities that will create in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that and I had that slide up there that spoke to that. That it's going to cause a lot of disruption in the job market. I mean, I've seen it myself. Places where I used to use, consultants or others, I don't, because that's what AI does. It takes all this information that we all have and basically just processes it. So if you get the best, I mean, the human, we're just not capable of being that quick and processing what machines can, right? So it's inevitable. And so I think that's one of the risks that we might not have, that we have to take into account. Like, how are we going to address the societal impact of this? Because there's no way to stop it. And you can maybe slow it down a bit, but at some point, I do think that machines are going to be, they're going to. I don't want to sound existentialist, but they're going to become very, very smart. And for people who are in, the legal profession, I mean, why, if you have a machine that can tell you the outcome of, the last 50 cases over the last 5,000 years on a specific topic that would have taken a lawyer months or a team of lawyers, that's not necessary anymore. So, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know what fields would be immune, because even coding now is probably not going to be as necessary, right? Because you can just tell the machine to code. So I think it's something that, one of the areas that we are going to have to really grapple with. And to a certain extent, I believe that people in emerging markets might be less impacted immediately because it's still very manual and labor intensive. And so I think those things are relatively safe for now. But I think it's more the developed markets that have to worry about that more. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Bidhan. I have time for another question. I'm wondering if Kenyang Thik Akun, if you want to go ahead and ask your question, we would love to hear it. And I'm sure I pronounced your name wrong, so I'm sorry about that. All right. We've sent you an invitation to unmute if you're able to, Kenyang. But in the meantime, if you're not able to, maybe we can hear from Saroj from Nepal.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. I would like to thank ma'am and Aspire for this wonderful opportunity and insightful session. And I have a good question regarding AI governance and regulation. So given the extremely dynamic nature of AI, do we have the privilege to employ empirical approach when it comes to AI regulation and governance? Or should we base our decision making intuitive thinking? What do you think?
So, I'm not sure I got the question, but I think you said, something about the regulation? Do we have are you asking if we have the capability to regulate? Is that what you asked?
No, I'm more concerned about the approach we should take. Like, should we take empirical approach or intuitive?
Right. Well, it's hard. I mean, it's one of those things that you have to get it just not too hot, not too cold, right? Because I do think, well, I think again, it's a tale of two worlds. I think in the more developed markets where AI is really already on the tracks and it's like already left the station, right? That you have to, I think that requires much more regulation and understanding what's going on. In emerging markets where it's still new and nascent, I don't know if regulation there are two sides of regulating. There's the regulating in innovation, like coming up with use cases, what challenges should we look at, and then there's the privacy, right? And I think in they're more regulating the big companies who have already gone. So I don't think when they go into regulate, I think it's really important that it's not just one broad brush, right? That it should be very specific, like you might be more open to innovation than you are, but then maybe in terms of regulating those who are already very active, and that tends to be the big companies, the big techs, how they use information and data. So, so I don't think it's, and the question is there the capacity? I don't even know if there's a capacity in the developed markets because it's happening so fast, right? That it's one of those challenges, like, do they know how to regulate this? And with technology, they're always ahead of the regulators, right? So by the time you figured out one, the solution for one, the problem is somewhere has already advanced down the field. So yeah, I think there has to be regulation, there has to be protection, but for emerging markets, I think it's much more, how do you incentivize innovation, to be honest.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your insight.
Yeah, thank you, Saroj. Monique, I wanted to check in and see how you're doing. You've been so wonderful answering so many questions so far.
Yeah, no, I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm sorry we won't be able to get to all, but I'm really, these are all great questions. And these, and I don't have all the answers. I just have perspective based on what I've observed.
Sure. Yeah. That's so valuable, though. So maybe we'll invite a few more folks to ask questions if that works.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, let's see. Yes, we do have so many folks' hands raised. I'm wondering, Sujan Kiawali, if you would like to unmute, we'd love to hear your question.
Thank you, ma'am, for this great opportunity. I'd like to thank Gaspar and thank you, Monique, ma'am. So my question is, how should the data ownership right be managed when the data is coming from multiple sources? So this is the first question I want to.
How it should be managed.
Yeah.
Well,
Who is taking the ownership of the data?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that's very specific to each market, right? And right now, the data is being held by, by the companies that are doing the research, and in many cases, they can do what they want. I mean, as I said, the most advanced regulation is in Europe with their data protection laws, and so that, to some extent, is at least addressing the problem. But again, it's very specific. Which data is what can be captured, who owns it, and where it's stored. But it's, again, I think it's one of those things that many of us, we kind of opt in with just by using some of these tools that make our life more efficient. It's very hard to opt out if in today's world. Again, I mean, and that I say that as living in the Bay Area, where almost everything is digital. I don't even carry cash, right? So everything I do is digital. My car is digital. Everyone knows where I'm going when. So it's really, and that provides a lot of benefits, right? But so I think that's the price we pay for for convenience. And there's very little that can be done to not to stop companies from having the data, using the data, because I think we all sign these things that are, 20,000 word user agreements or whatever, that essentially does that. So I guess you have to depend to a great extent on your governments and these other bodies. That's I mean, and it's all packaged as convenience. So unless you want to disconnect altogether, it's difficult.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your question, John.
Yeah.
Frank Cabral, would you like to ask your question next?
Hi, everyone, and thank you very much, Monique. Thank you, Jen, for this opportunity and this wonderful initiative. Well, I am Frank Gabriel Messi, and I serve as a financial analyst in Cameroon. So my question is more oriented towards the current situation in developing countries. So Monique, please, what would you say is the most important danger that developing countries, which are currently using AI for their economic activities, should try to manage, and how can they actually manage that important danger?
And how can they manage the data?
No, risk. Let's just call it risk.
I didn't get can you say the last part of your, I understood everything. What was the last part?
Okay, I was asking how can our government, let's say the government of developing countries, manage the risk that are associated with the use of AI in our economic activities? Because as we all know, yes.
Yeah. So I mean, I think much of the data, you're asking about the data in emerging markets. How can the government manage that? Was that?
No, the risks which are associated with the use of AI in our economic activities in developing countries like Cameroon.
Okay. The risks associated with using AI.
Yes.
So I think, is that the question? The risk?
Yes. How can our government manage those risks, and what are those risks that the government of developing countries should focus on, should try to should strive to tackle and minimize them?
Yeah, I think the risk that emerging markets have is that the fact that the developed economies, and I showed you, I think that most of the United States overwhelmingly, European countries and so forth, that they are developing AI solutions that are very much focused on their demographics, right? And so if you try to apply those and that's dominating all AI. So if you're applying those AI solutions to your markets, whether it's Cameroon or somewhere else, it might not be that relevant, right? It's what's relevant here in the US is not going to follow. So the best way, I think, and that goes back to the question that was asked earlier, what can governments do, to regulate, is I think and how much regulation, I think they should be focused on regulating more the data privacy. They should and so that, the solutions that are brought from the big tech are, relevant and, it's not exacerbating stereotypes, or that's not relevant. But on the other side, I think they need to start developing their own data, databases of issues that are relevant to these markets. And to do that, you really need to have more and more people connected. And the connection is, given the high penetration of mobile phones, I think that's probably where the data is going to come from. But the more digitized our populations are, the better or the easier it is to build solutions for these markets. Because until you get critical mass, because again, AI relies on a lot of data. So if the people aren't connected, then you're not going to. So it's really getting more and more people connected, getting the data scientists, the research, and so forth to be very regional and specific. I think that's the best way to do it. Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the question.
Yes, thank you, Frank. I'm wondering if Esther Kitumeni, if you would like to unmute and ask your question. We would love to hear from you.
Can you hear me? Hello. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I basically have two questions. My name is Esther and I am from Uganda. So currently I am actually working in a literacy company and we are trying to develop this application for children, but we are trying to include AI in it. So now I am asking, is there a better way that we can actually come up with this application and make things easier? Because we are looking at having all these applications in local areas where actually parents have access to exactly what their children are learning and the progress of their children according to their capacities and also learning abilities. Then my second question to Professor is that you mentioned that there are a lot of opportunities that actually come with AI. May I at least know some of the opportunities that come with the AI? And also the last question is, in Uganda currently right now, there's a lot of internet, I don't know how I can name it, but a lot of internet assaults. So I am just thinking or wondering, is AI connected to the internet assaults that is happening here in Uganda, especially when kids are getting more exposed to phones now? Like every child has a phone apparently, and then like there is all these informations out there that kids are exposed to. Is it bringing in the internet assault? Thank you so much. Those are my three questions.
So the first question was it literacy? You said, how can AI help with literacy? Was that the question?
Yes, the first question was, we are actually working on developing an application for literacy to help the children learn, read, spell, the words, but using the app. But then we are trying to integrate AI. So the question was, how easier
could we actually do the work? Like how easier can we integrate AI into this application?
Okay, so I mean, obviously, I don't know. I'm not familiar with that specific application that you're working on. But if I were in your shoes and I had an AI a literacy program that I was trying to enhance with AI, I would go to and again, that's what I mean. I think one of the benefits is illiteracy is illiteracy wherever you are. So if you have a question, that's a perfect question that you could ask chat GPT or whatever to find out who is doing research in that space, literacy, or how can literacy AI help literacy, and then you sort of go from there. Because I mean, the what's good about AI is really, at least that's what I found, is is the queries. You're constantly asking, it's giving you feedback, and you're pushing it to ask more and till you get exactly the question that you want, and that only comes from using it a lot, and until you get very specific, and it will give you very specific answers back. And I'm pretty sure that you would find that you're not the only one that's trying to figure out how to use AI to impact literacy. So that, and then the other question, I think, you said internet assault. Was that what you said?
Yes, I believe that's what she said. I know there have been outages.
Yes, I'm not quite sure what that. I mean, is that just internet fraud? Is she talking about, or?
I
wasn't sure.
sent you another request to unmute Esther if you'd like to clarify, but I can share that we have heard from folks that there have just been lots of outages in internet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I think Professor, that's exactly what I was asking. So there is a lot of abuse going on the internet. Like young children are actually being asked to share nude pictures of themselves and all these things. They are being there's a word, but then when someone has all these pictures of the kids, now the kids are actually meant to do everything the person says. So now I'm asking that.
Okay. So I think that's not. I mean, I wouldn't say AI is impact, because if all the major AI companies, they're very regulated, and trust me, they're quite. I mean, you can put in queries, so it's not a two-way street, right? You're asking the AI, and then it's coming to you. The AI is you're not just living your life, and then the AI comes to you. So you're putting in the questions, and they're very when it comes to violence, inappropriate content, they're quite conservative. So I think what the issues that you're talking about are much more related to social media than they are to AI at this point.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I'm wondering if next we could ask, Mohammed Yasinuddin to share your question.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Professor, to ask you some question. I'm actually I actually know a famous historian named by Yuval Noah Harari. I guess you also know him. I actually watched his podcast and his speech where he talked about like AI will enslave us, or the humanity will be annihilated by him. AI. All these things, or AI collect our data, and we are in presently we are depending so much on some apps like Tinder or the daily using app. Those apps we so much use that they collect our data. Okay. Mm-hmm. They collect all the data, and not happening today, but in future, the Yuval Noah Harari says that in future they collect our all data, and they suggest us what we'll do in future, like the odd question, like whom to marry, or the what career to choose, or the other future related question AI will suggest us, and we so much dependent on AI, and we are kind of enslaved on AI, and the humanity will be annihilated. It's his philosophy. And other question I want to ask that he also talked about the biotechnology and AI, and those the combining thing will create a new emerging civilization. Like if the Neuralink or chip in our brain, and we control those things, or the robotic hand we have controlled by AI, those things actually doing by AI. I want to ask that is
No, I lost this one.
can you hear me?
What was the final question? I just lost the last part of your.
This kind of philosophical question will be happen in the future or not?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to sound like an existentialist, but I do believe that there is some point, that there is a valid point in that, as I was saying, I think the machines are getting smarter and smarter. And I mean, and in a way, that's why reading that book, The Worlds I See, she talks about how human consciousness evolved, right? From, the very beginning up until now, where we're in the age of AI. And given how smart these machines are becoming, who's to say that they cannot make us extinct? Because we are just shells. And so if they become smart enough, the things that you're saying, it's not so far in the future. Some of it is happening now. I mean, AI can tell you, based on what you put in, and based on what's been programmed, who you should marry. I mean, now whether you choose to do that or not, do you believe it? And again, it would be, you'd have to take into account what's the data, because it's making those decisions not just based on you, but based on many other people, right? Who and collecting that information and then making those recommendations. And yes, and so it's kind of like when you had the chess matches with the human versus the machine. Soon the machine started beating the human, and so we shouldn't be surprised if you're putting all of this information, that all of our collective information into this, it's going to be smarter. So how do you even regulate that or stop that? And I think that's the danger that many people see, is that it could eventually make us extinct, or you have a different form of being emerging, and so so it's very interesting. I mean, I read the book on the book on Elon Musk. He's very interested, obviously, in AI, and Larry Page from Google. They talk about it. They're both having this discussion about Elon Musk was afraid. He was saying, it could make us extinct, and Larry was saying something like, "Well, okay, are you against, a new form of being? I mean, like an AI, So are you judging? Maybe it is good for humans to become extinct, right? Or something to that effect. But so the question is, can it make us extinct? I mean, I think it's definitely in the realm of possibilities if we see how, and I think that's why so many people are concerned, right? But they don't want to put the brakes on, because there's also a tremendous amount of good that AI can do. But it definitely could get out of hand. I mean, when you see how quickly it's evolving, yeah.
Awesome.
I hope I answered your question.
Thank you so much for your question, Yassine. So from the Aspire team's perspective, Monique, we have up to 10 more minutes, but I want to see how you're doing timing wise.
Yeah, I can finish. No, I had programmed for that time. So yeah.
Wonderful. In that case, next I would love to hear from Sumaya Rahman. If you're able to unmute, we would love to hear your question.
Yeah, thank you for giving me a chance. Hello, Professor. I am Sumaya from Bangladesh, and we are really honored to have your class today. Actually, I am a final year CSC student, and I am very interested in AI research field. So I want to ask you a question that what are the most promising research areas within AI ethics and global impact, and what interdisciplinary approaches would you recommend for someone looking to contribute to this field?
That's really interesting. What's the most I mean, I think I think it depends on your area of interest, right? And what appeals to you. Not so much, if I am a writer, for instance, there are lots of AI programs that are being applied to that field. I don't know what you're studying. What are you studying?
I'm studying in computer science and engineering, but basically my interest is in machine learning, deep learning, and in AI, actually.
Okay.
I want to explore more AI.
And you want to explore more?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, in terms of exploring it, I don't think there's any one specific field that I would say is more important or more. I mean, there are lots of exciting things happening across the board. Anyone who's involved in AI research, machine learning is highly sought after right now. And basically, it's almost it's more the. I mean, I think what's happening is that you have the specialists who just take all of this and they apply it to their field, right? And so, what's most passionate? Someone was asking about people with disabilities, right? So, if I'm someone who's working in that field, I'm going to take all the AI research that's out there and see, okay, how can I apply it to what I'm doing, right? But so you're a generalist, and it's really a matter of, to me, if I were you, it's like, okay, let me make sure that I'm collecting data that's relevant, that's, that are in areas that there's a huge demand for it. There's, in besides health, there's education. I mean, just think about how learning will change when, as AI develops. There's so many areas and applications that and that's the beauty of this is that you're developing the foundation, but people are going to have their own use cases, and that's the beauty. And as these different use cases start to interact with each other, and it's going to be in my view, it's going to be a very transformative world. And I think we're all trying to get a grip on how it's going to be, because I don't think we're all. So you saw the growth, right? The year-on-year growth of AI. It's growing exponentially already. NVIDIA is $1 trillion company. I hadn't even heard of NVIDIA like a year ago, a year and a half. So I think things are moving so quickly that people are trying to see where it's going. But I think if you're just in it and you're interested in the subject, I think anything you do will help the field as a whole.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor.
Ayman from Yemen, would you like to ask your question next?
Okay, yes. First of all, thank you for being here, Mehdi, and Prof. Mehdi. And I'm really honored to be to talk to you and to ask you a question that really concerned me as a person who's very interested in environment and in preserving environment. My question is how bad AI technologies, training it, using it, will affect environment. I mean, there are some information about how much energy that AI technology or machine takes in order to be trained. Like some estimations said that it takes more than 130 American homes that electricity equivalent to the electricity that takes 130 American homes per year, and it takes about the energy of 5 cars per years for usage. So my question is, like, is there a regulation? Is there a solution that we can focus, that we can study, and we can see as a normal world citizens? We can monitor the usage of energy that AI technology and machines are using it.
Yeah. I mean, a friend of mine told me, he's an engineer, he told me that AI uses less energy than some of the other things they're doing. But I mean, I think that's a legitimate point, right? Eventually, we're going to get to the point where there's just so much processing that needs to be done. That how much of the energy it's taking up. I don't think since it's moving at such a fast pace right now, and so much is happening, I don't think that has become prominent on the environmental agenda yet. But I mean, I think it's a matter of time before it does. But at the same time, for emerging markets, I don't think they're going to let that start. I mean, I think they're going to say we need to develop this. And so with all the other issues that are currently impacting the environment, given the pace and the impact, I think there'll be people who would argue more that AI is probably, because of all the other impacts, disruption that we talked about, that AI is having, it might have a net positive impact on the environment. I think it's still to be seen what kinds of economic disruptions are being caused. But if it is going to disrupt, I think it's also going to disrupt how we use energy and so forth. So I mean, if you're looking at the current situation and discussion on the environment and COP, I think it's I think right now they're probably more talking about how to harness AI to decrease energy consumption, if anything. That's my guess.
Okay, thank you. Because the question just come from the concern of, like, where we aspire we aim to use AI to tackle our climate change problems, not to have another problem.
Right.
To our that make the situation worse.
Right, exactly. And I think there are probably quite a few people who would argue that AI is more of a solution. But again, if you're interested in environmental issues, it's up to you to really see to what extent can you use that. As I said, I think it uses less energy than some of the other processing. So how can that be used to limit the impact of energy consumption in general? And I think if we're to believe all of this disruption that's going to be happening in the job market, in the economy, my guess is quite a bit of it will be lower usage of energy. Now, I don't know if it might increase in other spaces, but if people aren't traveling to work all the time, if they're just different ways that could play out, but you really would have to be in the energy space to see how it applies to you. And I think that's the beauty of this whole technology. It's not limited to one field, right? It's a tool that you can use for improving, whether it's the environment, whether it's access to finance, if that's what's interested, and that's my thought on the environment.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I think with that, we are approaching the end of our time for today. But I want to apologize to everyone's questions who we did not get to. Thank you for your great engagement during today's session. And of course, thank you to you, Monique. That was really so fun to spend so much time talking through our students' questions. So we really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I really appreciated the opportunity. I think those were great questions, and I'm really sorry we didn't get to answer all the questions. They're all fascinating ones, and I enjoyed speaking with all of you, and I just hope that you you found some, you were encouraged. I really do want to congratulate you for being part of this. I think that you are the leaders for tomorrow, and it's up to you to how, whether AI will make us extinct or if it will make us better, stewards of this planet.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, with that, I think I'll go ahead and officially close the session for our participants. If you have questions related to attendance, you can stay on the line and I'll be addressing some of those. But for folks who don't have questions related to that, you're welcome to head out, and we'll just say thank you once again, Monique, for joining us today.
Thanks so much. Have a nice weekend, everyone.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. To those of you who are sticking around to hear some questions and information about the attendance form, thank you again for coming to today's session and for your awesome engagement and questions for our speaker. I'll go ahead and share my screen to cover a few reminders related to attendance. So I hope that you are seeing this screen. So at this point, we have sent out the attendance form link in the Zoom chat. So if you don't see it right there when you go, scroll back up. It's been sent many times, and we will continue to send that there. If for some reason you missed the link in the Zoom chat, we will also be sharing it in Discord under the Discord chat channel that's for this particular masterclass. So you can find it there if for some reason you miss it here during the session. Please make sure you follow the instructions closely. It's really important that you're first signed into your Apire account before you try to access the form. If you don't sign into your Apire account first, you won't be able to fill out your name or your email in the form. So that is going to be the first step to take. The form is going to be open for 3 hours from now, so it will close in 3 hours. If you're unable to submit your attendance form within 3 hours, for some reason, you will have to attend another session and submit its attendance form to get credit. A reminder that you must attend one masterclass during Module 2, and you need to submit an attendance form for that class. If you successfully submit the form, you will know that it has been recorded because you will receive an email from Apire that confirms the email just says thank you for submitting your form, and that is just to confirm to you that your form has been recorded. If for some reason you're still experiencing technical issues related to the form, so you have questions about getting logged in or it's not letting you fill it out, that's going to be because of something that you're missing in the instructions. So my best recommendation is to work together with your other peers in Discord to try and figure out what your issue is, and they can hopefully give you advice because we have seen lots of forms submitted already. So if you are particularly having an issue, it's probably something that your peers are able to help you navigate since they've figured it out at this point. So again, if you receive a forbidden error when you access the form, please click the home page and then try logging in. And then you should be able to paste in the link for the attendance form, and it will auto-populate your first name and your last name and your email. So you won't have to fill those out since you're already logged in. With that, I think those are all of the reminders I wanted to share with you. But thank you so much for joining today's session. That was a lot of fun to get to talk with Professor Maddie so much. And thank you for your wonderful questions and engagement. All right. With that, we'll go ahead and end the meeting. And we hope to see you at future masterclasses, and have a good weekend, everybody. Thank you.
The recording has stopped.